thank you very much for having me here today. I'm extremely excited about what I just heard. Talk about a couple of great speakers to follow up on. So I hope I can do a little bit of justice and bring a little bit of information to you all. So yeah, my name is Zach Warren. I've been with Tanium for about 7 months, but I've been using the technology for well over 10 years. I've been utilizing Tanium's technology within the Department of Defense at the United States, within the Air Force of the United States, and those are some bright lights. I can't even see the faces. I like to look at people. But Tanium has been able to enable organizations to be able to have a level of visibility, to be able to bring a level of security maturity into their organizations. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've seen in the world, some of the things that we're dealing with today, and some of the things that we've actually been seeing in the wild, if you will, just during the past few months with the different crisis, if you want to call it a crisis. I refer to it as a war that we're having here in Europe, right, that is very concerning. So let's go ahead and jump right in here. I read Sun Tzu when I was a young man. I was probably only like 13 the first time I had got The Art of War and read that. It was very interesting to read that. I study a lot of martial arts and spent a lot of time in Israel doing Krav Maga, and this is something that we live by, right? Every battle is won before it even begins. You need to be before it's even fought, you need to be able to see what's going on in your environment. You need to have the data and the information to be able to react and respond to what's going on in your environment. So it's the same thing as if you're walking down an alleyway, right? And you see a great big guy on the other side of the street, or on your side of the street, you're gonna maybe cross the street and walk around him. You wanna avoid that type of problem. And it's the same thing in our environments at work. So I've heard a lot of talk already about who the target is, okay? So I want to talk a little bit about, most nations are under attack. We see that. We see that in the news, right? As you can tell from my accent, I'm from the States. We're attacked all the time. We're doing a lot of attacking, right? Let's not joke around about it. We know what's actually going on out there. And so organizations are going to be under attack. You're going to be under attack. Dependent upon what your industry is, you might be more of a target than other industries, right? We do know that finance, for example, is a great target because they control the money, right? So you want to make some money, let's go attack finance, right? It makes sense. So we need to be able to start developing a strong negotiation position, right? Now, I'm not saying that we need to go into negotiation with every ransomware gang or that comes to kind of, decrypt or steal our data, but we need to be able to have the vision, the information, be able to have a strategy around how to deal with these type of events and attacks. So that's what I'm talking about with negotiation, and I'll get into that a little bit more here in a second. So when I hear about people talking about ransomware attacks, people call me all the time, friends, family, people that aren't even in cyber, and they're like, oh my God, Zach, I can't believe it. Somebody paid $4.4 million to a ransomware gang just to get their data decrypted. What does that mean, right? And they see that $4.4 million, just as an example, as being a lot of money, and it is, right? But is that the real cost of a ransomware attack or different cyber attacks? Absolutely not. We're talking about loss of life, okay? We're talking about organizations, hospitals there's actually been hospitals that have, because of ransomware, not being able to give the amount or the right type of protection to individuals, and so we've lost life that way. There's been loss of life within the military when it comes to cyber attacks. Geopolitical reputation, or if we look at this from a business perspective, think about the reputation loss, okay? Especially within the supply chain. If I provide your company with a certain component to be able to build your technology, and I've been hacked, and I've been a victim of ransomware, are you going to want to continue the relationship with me and my organization, or is that going to make you think twice, right? The loss of leadership talent. We just heard how CISOs are not sleeping well, right? So my experience is that CISOs tend to have a life expectancy of 9 months? And when I say life expectancy, I mean within the organization, right? But about 9 months, right? Because they get in and the CEO says, hey, the board told me we need to be secure, go fix that, right? Oh, we just got breached? You're fired. I'm gonna go find me another one, right? How brutal is that? No thank you. Legal liability, we won't even get into that, right? I have had a customer that got hit by ransomware and it opened up a whole can of worms because we found out we weren't GDPR compliant, right? So that was another big check that they had to write to the German government. And then, of course, data loss, right? My favorite example of data loss is just how well China has been able to grow and develop over the past 10 years. And what is that based on? What is that growth based on? Right? The growth is based on stolen IP. I mean, more power to them. That's a quick way to get to your end result, right? So this is the world that we live in, and I don't want to be all doom and gloom. I know we've had enough of that, right, over the past 2 years, but this is the world that we live in. This is what's going on, right? This is what we're seeing. And of course, loss of national security. That happens. And of course, when we're talking about business, I've seen organizations that have had a ransomware attack. They've paid the ransom, okay, because they thought that that was the only way they could get their data back. They tried to decrypt their data. It didn't go well, right? Even if you got the key, it doesn't mean that it's going to be decrypted and everything's going to be, totally fine like before you got encrypted, right? And they were still struggling to get their company back up and running, and the company did go bankrupt, okay? So it doesn't, even if you pay the ransom, it doesn't mean you're going to be okay. All right, so let's get over all the negativity, right? So what's causing all of these attacks is really what we've heard in the past 2 talks. There's a lot of kind of failures by our organizations, right? And I'm not going to point the finger at the victims and say, hey, you guys aren't doing a good job. We're trying to do our best. We really are. We all are, okay? But there's certain things that we need to be putting in place. There's certain levels of visibility that we need to be developing so that we know what's going on within our organization, so we know how to respond to these attacks. Now, ransomware is becoming extremely lucrative. So I was with the Ministry of Defense in the Czech Republic 2 weeks ago, and I started joking with a group of generals, and I said, did you know that we could get on the dark web right now? I could show you where to download some rat tools. We can get online and we can make some money. And they were like, oh, really? Want to tell me more? And so I had to kind of back them off of that. I was like, yeah, we could get some ransomware as a service, pay a couple grand. You guys got $2,500 I could borrow, and I'll get you some ransomware as a service, right? And we'll go and we'll get we'll raise some funds for the military, right? Anyway, it was all joking. We were all having a good time, but it's becoming extremely lucrative and easy to do. Malware as a service is making things really, really easy, right? So it doesn't take anybody with huge amounts of talent to be able to do these attacks, but some knowledge of where to find things. And then there's the nation-state support, okay? There's an unwritten rule in Russia, as long as you're not attacking our resources, feel free to do what you want in the West, right? So there's even been talks about, the CISO at Tanium and I were just talking about this, maybe we should download as our help me with the word, with our keyboards as being Russian alphabet, because if they see a Russian alphabet on your laptop, they won't attack it because they think it's Russian, right? So some of the malware has that written in the code. If you detect Russian alphabet, then you don't attack that system. But that doesn't mean to go change all your systems to Russian. Good luck doing that. All right, so let's prepare. What are we going to do? All right, I want to bring some positive things to this. What are we going to do? We want to counteract what's going on, okay? So I beg each of you to really start to build the insights into your IT environment, right? Understand what you have. Understand your assets. And when I'm talking about assets, I mean not just all the endpoints, not all your routers and servers. That's all very, very important. But understand where your data sits. Understand the dependencies on that data for your applications and things like that. Then remove and keep out the bad actors. Now here's a quick question. When you respond to an incident and you see that you have a bad actor in your environment and you're able to remove them, how certain are you that you have completely removed them out of your environment? Right? Scary. Because a lot of times they find little corners of your environment to just kind of sit and hide in the shadows and wait for things to calm down, and then they come and attack you again, right? So we want to make sure that with 100% capability that we're kicking them out of our environment. And then we want to develop these different types of measures, and I'm going to get into what that means. Here it is. This is the time to pull out your notebooks if you're old school like me and write on paper, or get out your phones, take some pictures. I always joke around this one because it's kind of like the 5 steps to getting a six-pack, right? We're not going to get that here, but these are the 5 steps, things to really keep in mind if you want to improve and have an effective and efficient cyber profile. So why do I say efficient, right? Effective and efficient. I say that because when, well, I'm from West Texas, so I'm gonna have to, you're gonna have to excuse a little bit of my French, but when the shit hits the fan, right, you need to have a system, you need to have a cyber team that is already so efficient that they're not gonna have to shift all of their focus, right, away from what they should be doing to focus on an attack, because that's what's gonna happen. And as you shift your focus, this needs to be running so well, like a well-oiled machine that's efficient and effective, so that we can then take resources off of it and focus on what the real problem is. Okay, here we go. You need to understand your assets, and you need to figure out what your gaps are in your environment. Understand where you're weak. Understand what you need to be building on, okay? One of my favorite things, you can't tell because I've been in Europe for 2 years now, but I used to do a lot of CrossFit, right? Have you guys, there's much CrossFit going on in Ireland these days? No? Maybe so. But one of the worst things about going to CrossFit is they try to figure out what your weakness is, and then they make you do that 115 times, right? It's horrible. It's the worst thing in the world. I hate running, and so what do they make me do? They made me run every time I came to the box, right? So understand what your weaknesses are and then focus on those. Fix those weaknesses. Improve your IT hygiene. We heard about this just now from our 2 previous speakers. IT hygiene is a huge, huge issue. Whenever I talk to organizations, CISOs tell me, yeah, Zach, I've got somewhere between 100,000 and 150,000 endpoints. Ooh, that's kind of a big 100 or 150,000, right? Smaller organizations, yeah, I think I've got about 4,000 endpoints. Well, that's not a very precise number. You know, do you have 3,722 or, you know what I mean? So let's understand more about what we actually have in our environments, and then let's make sure that those systems are up to date, that they've got the latest and greatest patches on them, or however we, you know, what we deem as what's right for our environments. And then develop this strong negotiation position, which has a lot to do with having that visibility, that knowledge. So one of the most frustrating things is when the FBI shows up at your door, right, or Europol. I work very closely with Europol in Germany, and when they come up to you and they say, hey, we need this information, and most organizations are like, I don't even know how to get you that information, or coach me on how to gather that type of data. We need to start building up ways of being able to support our law enforcement with that type of data. Okay, so you need to have that level of visibility. Again, I talked about defense needs to be efficient, and then finally, reevaluate your endpoint tools. Okay, this one is the most important one for me, right? And I know I'm standing in between us and lunch, right? So I'm going to try to just bring this last message across. The thing of it is if your endpoint security technology lost visibility at all in 2020, when the crisis was really kicking our butts and everybody was working from home, right? And all these organizations were really struggling to keep an eye on what was going on. I have customers that, they couldn't get enough laptops to send their people home with. So we had people working from their own personal laptops or, borrowing some from friends or family or whatever, right? You start to lose visibility of what's actually going on in your environment. And so if you've lost visibility, you need to look at reevaluating that endpoint solution, okay? If you have to do a lot of care and feeding and constant management of your endpoint tool, there's other products out there. We just heard about some great products that are able to really pull in all of that data and give you that level of visibility constantly, okay? So make sure that you're looking at all these different things. Make sure that you're evaluating your product sets. Put the OEMs, put their feet to the fire. Challenge them. Make sure that they're giving you the best support that they can possibly give you, right? Demand that from them, right? I tell my customers all the time, demand excellence from our team, right? So from a Tanium perspective, I know most of you, just a show of hands, I can kind of see people, who's actually heard of Tanium before I got up here? Oh, wow, I feel good about that. That makes me happy, because in Germany, if I was to do the same thing, I live in Hamburg, Germany now, if I was to do the same thing, there would be no hands up, right? First of all, that's because they're German. Second of all, it's because we're not that well known in EMEA yet, right? In the States, Tanium's fairly well known. But what Tanium is going to be able to do is give you these things, be able to give you that level of visibility into your environment, even breaking into the OT, IoT environments, helping you be able to have that level of visibility so that you can make sure that you have the right patches on these devices. So you can make sure that you have the visibility of the different vulnerabilities in your environment, and so that you can react to those and get those patched and squared away as fast as possible, okay? So I really appreciate the time. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for being so adamant about being involved in cybersecurity. It's a passion of mine. If you have any questions or want to chat a little bit more, I'll be at our booth a little bit later on, so we'll see you all. Thank you.